This is a one-man gang. You're listening to Booking the Territory Pro Wrestling Podcast.
Hey guys, this is Eric Young, and you're listening to Booking the Territory.
This is Booking the Territory, a pro wrestling podcast hosted by Mike Mills, Hardbody Harper from Wildcat Sports and Entertainment, and the mentally irregular Doc Turner. This podcast is a mix of your topics and thoughts in the world of pro wrestling, along with interviews and discussions with current independent stars and your favorite stars from the past. And now, here's your host, Mike Mills.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Booking the Territory Pro Wrestling Podcast on our YouTube channel, where we are sitting down and talking to one of the biggest stars and was biggest free agent in the world of professional wrestling as of April of 2016, recently making his debut in WWE NXT. He is none other than Eric Young. Eric is going to talk to us a lot about his TNA time on this episode of the show. It was a great discussion that we had with him in conjunction with our friends at Main Event Madness. If you like pro wrestling or love pro wrestling like we do here on Booking the Territory Pro Wrestling Podcast, we also have a weekly podcast where we discuss WWE, ROH, TNA, and we take your questions to bookingtheterritory@gmail.com, and we review all of the great shows that come on weekly with those three organizations. We like to have a lot of fun. It's a little bit of comedy, a little bit of banter back and forth between myself, Doc Turner, and Hardbody Harper from Wildcat Sports and Entertainment, and it's an all-around good time. So if you're tuned into this and you're checking out our discussion with Eric Young on Booking the Territory's YouTube channel, make sure you check out our podcast that you can find on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Tuned In Radio, Podcast Addict, just to name a few. We got some links below in the description area of this YouTube video. Make sure you check that out, and hopefully you'll subscribe to the show and enjoy us. If not, hey, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode with Eric. If you do like us, why don't you give us a follow as well at BTT_podcast, or check us out, or also check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/Booking the Territory. Other than that, I'm not going to hold you any longer. Let me throw it over to myself, Mark Madison from Main Event Madness, and Eric Young.
Waldo Von Erich, Carl LeDuc, Scott D'Amore, Chris Kanyon. They're all names that have been credited with training you. To what would you credit what you've gained from each of those experiences?
Oh man, obviously each is his own individual, that's for sure. Waldo, he was pretty old and beat up when I met him. He's since passed on since then, but was a great guy. And a lot of what I learned from Waldo wasn't any of the physical stuff so much. It was just about the mentality, like the psychological mentality of wrestling and being in character and making people believe. And those are things that I hold those things near and dear still to this day. And this is a guy that, he still holds the record for the longest wrestling match in Madison Square Garden history, 93 minutes with Bruno Sammartino. He had these crazy stories. People thought he was a real Nazi, and they tried to kill him. And I can't believe how, it would be hard to imagine how good that would make you feel. And that sounds crazy to say, but having people hate you that much and you're making them hate you is just insane to think. But yeah, all those guys had a very integral part early on and even later on in my life. Scott, I'm not sitting here talking to you guys for Scott D'Amore, that's for sure.
And Chris?
Kanyon was actually shooting the Jesse Ventura story. He was outsourced by WCW at the time to be the head choreographer, fight choreographer and stunt coordinator for the Jesse Ventura movie, which aired on, I believe it was NBC. It was kind of the unsanctioned, unofficial Jesse Ventura movie. And NBC spent a bunch of money on it. And I met him. He lived up in Toronto and in Canada, southwestern Ontario, for months. And I did a small part in the movie. And up until actually I started wrestling for TNA, it was the most money I'd ever made in wrestling, which is hilarious because it was about 30 seconds of wrestling. And then you see me, but you can't really tell it's me. It's a scene where he had just come back from the army and stuff, and they go to the ring, and there's a quick spot, and I'm one of the guys doing it. But yeah, Canyon was, it was cool being with a guy that was on TV at the time, and a guy that I really liked, like a guy that I loved. He was really innovative and was kind of ahead of his time, was doing stuff that nobody was doing way back then.
Oh, no doubt. Anybody that hasn't watched really any of those WCW days, if you go back and watch, you'll see the kind of stuff that he did. So, share, if you would, the WrestlePlex training facility. What inspired the operation of it? And at the time, outside of yourself, was there anyone that you could foresee maybe coming out of that and being a success?
Yeah, WrestlePlex. There was actually two. There was WrestlePlex Ontario and WrestlePlex Vancouver. They were loosely affiliated. I knew the guy that was running the one out there and really liked him, Rocket Randy Tyler, and I was buddies with him and Ben Nelson, I guess is Nelson Creed, Mad Bomber. He had a bunch of different names, but another very good friend of mine that was kind of helping run the school there. And I started the school really because I love training guys. Like I started doing it very early on. You had mentioned Carl LeDuc, which was kind of responsible for all of my physical in-ring training up front, was a guy that lived at the same place I did in the same apartment and trained us 5 days a week and then kind of disappeared in the middle of the night. And I had some experience and I guess was one of the better students that was there every night. So I kind of took over training. And then I started doing indies and stuff and had started doing tryouts with the WWE, and I really wanted a place where I could stay sharp, and I loved wrestling and being able to have my own ring and go over and work on stuff and wrestle whenever I want. It sounded really appealing to me. So I started my own gym, and I didn't have a pile of students, but a lot of really good students, dedicated guys that were there 3-4 nights a week, and it was an amazing experience, man. And I'm happy to say I trained Ty Dillinger, NXT. I trained him. I was the first school he went to, and he was good right away. I mean, I could tell him one thing or show him one thing, and he could already do it and do it better probably than I could do it. So, yeah, it's a very cool thing, kind of like your kid going to Harvard or something like that when he signed his first deal, and he's still there and is very, very respected for several reasons, but his in-ring ability kind of speaks for itself. Crazy Steve that works for TNA Wrestling, another guy I trained, Jake O'Reilly, Ashley Six, Chris Chambers, Brady Wethram. These are all guys out of Ontario that have done something, you know what I mean, that have made a good name for themselves. And I never guaranteed anything. I just said, if you come here and you'll get good training and you'll know how to wrestle, whether that means you'll do it for a living or do it independently, that's more up to you. But it's, it was a blast having that school.
Explain your initial involvement with TNA and how the idea with Team Canada came about. What did you feel about the collection of guys that were part of the faction and maybe what lied ahead? I guess, is it safe to say Scott was part of that to some extent?
Yeah, huge part of it. I was doing tryouts pretty heavily with the WWF at the time, WWE now. Me and Bobby Roode both were doing them. It seemed like every month, they would contact us and have us drive down, and kind of nothing really stuck. And I remember having a brief conversation with Stephanie McMahon about maybe coming there, and then this TNA had called me, and I had done I think one 4-man tag with them on one of their pay-per-views, and they were getting ready to do the very first World X Cup, and they said, we're interested in you coming down and being part of Team Canada. And my first contract was for 4 shows. And that's the same with Bobby and Petey and Johnny Devine, all the other 3 members of Team Canada. And we remember just getting like really crazy heat right away. And being in a group with 4 guys that are as talented as those guys, Scott, Johnny, Petey, Bobby, and me in there too. It just took off, and they signed all of us to full-time deals after the 4 shows, and that wasn't the original idea. We were signed for 4 shows only, and I guess we impressed them, and they signed us to have like kind of a heel Canadian faction full-time, and it was, dude, it was amazing. Some of the fondest memories of my career.
Now, after kind of moving away from Team Canada, that initial feud with Robert Roode and James Storm was a really special time. Where did the idea of the paranoia of the young character come about, and what stood out about that feud in particular, like as a highlight?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was pressuring them. I mean, as much as somebody that's new can pressure them, I just said like, I just want a character. I want a gimmick. You know what I mean? It doesn't even really particular matter, what it is, a heel or a baby face or, whatever it is that you guys think you need. That's my strength. That's my skill set is making people believe that I'm that person, that I'm crazy, or I'm happy-go-lucky, or I'm funny, or I'm whatever it is that you decide that you need. That's my number one skill set. I can wrestle with anybody. Physically, there's guys that athletically they make me look like I'm a slug, but I can keep up with almost anybody. But I always bothered them and brought to their attention that my skill set was being able to portray a character. And for the first 2 years I was there, I didn't say a single word. I was in a lot of pre-tapes and a lot of promos, but I never said anything. That was always Scott. Sometimes it was Bobby. Sometimes it was PD. Every now and then Johnny would say something, but I never said a single word for almost 2 years. And if you watch the show, up until a couple of weeks ago, TNA, you would probably not thought that was the case. But yeah, I was the kind of silent guy that was there to carry the action. And I got hired because I was a wrestler. And a lot of people knew me as the comedy guy or however you want to say that. But I never made a name for myself in wrestling being a comedy guy. The comedy stuff started in TNA. I was never a comedy guy on indies. I never did any funny angles. I never did any character stuff. I was a wrestler. That's how I got my job. And then that thing kind of came along and they said, we want you to be paranoid about being fired and all the stuff of like falling down from my pyro and all that stuff. I came up with all that stuff just on the fly or thinking about what would it be like if I was a pro wrestler and I was really paranoid, and I'm talking really paranoid. So, how wrestling it is, it's a version of yourself turned up to 25 or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, it all kind of happened naturally, I guess. But it's it was. I just liked it because I could sink my teeth into it. Like people really thought that I was worried, or I was just kind of like simpleton and and was very simple, happy-go-lucky. And part of that is me. I am part that guy, but people believe that's who I was, and that makes me proud, man.
Awesome. You talked about having fun and being a bit of a comedy guy, but wrestlers are often referred to as superheroes, but you had a chance to be Super Eric. That first show was a lot of fun. As a fan watching it, where did the idea initially come about from that, and was more planned for it?
Yeah, it was kind of written for kind of like an alter ego of Eric Young, this kind of timid, very easygoing, simple, happy-go-lucky, not aggressive, kind of afraid wrestler. So there's not a lot of room there, not a lot of places you can go. And they came up with the idea of making me into a superhero. And I'm a comic nerd. Like I'm staring right now to two things hanging on my office wall. It's the original Captain America cover and the original Spider-Man cover. They're two pieces of art that I bought to put in my office because I love comic books. So I had my own mask and a cape, and I broke out of handcuffs and jumped off the top of a cage and fought monsters. It was amazing. It was short-lived. It didn't last long. I wish I could have done a little more with it, but it was fun, man. Like my fondest memories was working Billy Gunn on house shows, and I would start the match just kind of in long tights and boots, and he would, knock me around, and I was scared of him, and I would roll under the ring and then come out the other side with the hood and the the cape and all the stuff on and knock him around. And if you've ever seen Billy Gunn in real life, he's humongous. Like he's a humongous human being, good guy, and even better wrestler. And we had these amazing matches. It was all thanks to the super strength of Super Eric.
One of the biggest feuds of your career early on was against the Main Event Mafia. What did that experience leave you with, and what have you been able to take from that and move throughout your career from it?
For me, it was kind of like my first step into a serious role which I think there was a lot of doubters, you know, and I get that. Like, I had been cast as kind of the popcorn guy, the funny guy, don't take him too serious, and, you'll cheer for him and stuff, but then he gets beat guy. And that was a stretch, it was a stretch, and self-admittedly a big stretch. And, but I was excited, man. That was my first kind of step into the real wrestling world. And you got guys, tagging with Kevin Nash, and on the other side, you got Steiner and Angle and Booker T. And I kind of proved, I think, that I can hang with those guys, whether it's verbally or in the ring or any of that stuff. And, I didn't let myself be intimidated by any of them. I stood up for myself, and I slid myself into the role as best I could. And, very, very cool, man. It was really cool for me because it was a test. Can I do it at that level? And I think I proved that I could. But another one that was going really well, but it was a kind of changing of the guard at TNA at the time, and they didn't like that angle, and they didn't like me and Kevin together, so they split us up, and it was back to square one again for me. But it was very fond memories for me, and I wouldn't change any of it. It's all of it's a huge learning experience.
Now, EY as a face is great, but heel EY is just amazing. If you could have shared some of that program that you worked with Jarrett and Angle and Mick Foley, thoughts, feelings, what did that give you?
I mean, for me, confidence. That's that stuff just it allowed me to be confident and know that I can do it. And I think everyone deals with self-doubt in whatever it is that you do. And if you got to step outside yourself or step outside of what you feel comfortable doing. I feel comfortable doing anything in wrestling. I've said this in other interviews. I'm not good at anything. Like I'm terrible at life and paying bills and being a regular human being and all that kind of regular life stuff. I'm awful at it. I'm not great at any sports. I'm not really good at much of anything, but wrestling I can do. And I was good at it right away. The first day I did it. I knew that I was going to be able to do it at some level. I mean, you never know, if you're going to be able to make it, and the truth is a lot of the times it's kind of out of your hands, if you're really, really good. But, yeah, it's pro wrestling is something I can do. And doing that kind of stuff just gave me confidence and the knowledge of, I can do it at any level.
We talked about you being part of Team Canada and being more of a background player at the time. But then when World Elite came about, you were head front and center of the faction. How would you have differentiated between the two and your role, and how did that initially all come about?
Again, that was me saying, I got no problems being the funny guy, but I think I'm suited for a bigger role. I have a skill set that is much more than I'm being allowed to do at this point. And they wrote the thing, and it was kind of like a whole bunch of us that kind of didn't have a lot going on, and they put us in this group, this kind of like foreign heel group, and I liked the idea of it. It wasn't so much that America's stupid. It's, like it wasn't the typical like, oh, we hate Americans and we hate America. It's that we love America, but the problem is Americans are messing it up for everybody. And it's a really kind of maybe too deep of an idea for pro wrestling, but I really liked it, man. And when it came down to it, it was USA versus the bad guys from other countries, but it was cool. I got to talk a lot and be the leader of this group filled with super talented people, Doug Williams, Magnus, Kiyoshi, Davari, just loaded, Rob Terry, guys like that could do everything. We had a tool for every situation, and it was a great group, and it was getting a lot of heat, and it was getting over, and then the guard changed at TNA again, and this was another angle that was a victim of circumstance more than anything.
Was there anything that, hindsight, if it could have lasted and the guard didn't change per se, that you could have foreseen for it a little more?
A group like that, because there's so many parts, it could still be going. In some form or fashion, the truth is that we never really got a chance to sink our teeth into it. I think it was maybe 6 months, maybe 8 months at the most, where we really got to do it. And we were just kind of starting to really establish what it was and who we were and what we meant. And then it was split up again. And that was frustrating for me. That's part of wrestling, though. That's I'm not mad about it, but it's frustrating. When you pour yourself into something like that and you believe wholeheartedly in it, and then it gets pulled out from underneath of you for really no good reason. It's just personal choice, I suppose. But a lot of times that's what it comes down to in pro wrestling. It's personal choice.
Last year, I had the opportunity to speak to ODB, and she said one of the highlights of her career was working alongside you. Maybe you could share your impressions of that working relationship, that angle, and if there was anything that you would have liked to change or add, and how that all was for you.
For me, it was over. Like people loved it. If I do wrestling conventions or I do signings or I do other shows, people always ask, where's ODB? I loved you guys together and I love that angle so much. And remember when you did this and remember when you did that. And, it was fun, man. She is a ultra talented person. Probably at the time was the most over knockout there and is good talking, is good in the ring, understands wrestling, understands who she is and how she fits into the wrestling landscape and how to get over. There's no better skill in wrestling and how to get over, and whether that's make people like you or make people hate you, that's the number one skill. And I believe that wholeheartedly to this day. And she's one of the best at it ever. If you're asking me for women in wrestling, she could do whatever. And, I loved it. It was so fun and people loved it. And I think someone was telling me the other day, we were the only wedding to start and finish without it being it was interrupted, but then we carried on and we finished it in the cage. I guess that was why we decided to have it in the cage, so people couldn't come in and ruin it for us. But yeah, a lot of cool memories from that, man. It was a super fun kind of, this super group or power couple or however you want to say it. And we had the belts, and I'm wrestling women for 6 months, but I'm not allowed to touch them. And a lot of people don't know that stuff, like you're watching the show and you're like, oh, this is fun. But if you really go back and look, I don't touch them. The Spike TV had a rule where men and women weren't allowed to touch. So I wrestled women for 6 months, but I couldn't touch them. And to me, I don't know. I don't know if there's a lot of guys out there, wrestlers out there that could pull that off. And I did it. And that's probably what I'm most proud out of that is no one ever said, oh, they don't ever do anything. No one ever said that. No one ever said this is stupid or I don't like it. They just said that was fun, that was entertaining, that was good. And that's, for me, that's the ultimate feather in the cap, because I really couldn't do anything.
On May 29th, you'll be competing for Smash Wrestling against Johnny Gargano. How does it feel about competing for Smash and being back in Ontario?
Ontario is my home. That's where I grew up. That's where I cut my teeth in wrestling. That's where I started. And Johnny's ultra talented. This will be, I think, our third match, and we've got really, really good chemistry. I worked him this past summer for Global Force in Cleveland, his hometown, and I was the bad guy, and it was amazing. And he came out, was a surprise, and it was just fun, man. He's a great guy. He's a great wrestler, and this will be my first time wrestling for Smash, but I hear only good things, and I know Sebastian a little bit, and I know a lot of the guys that work on the shows. And Ontario is a hotbed, man. There's 20 guys working in that part of the country that could be on TV right now, and wrestling fans there are spoiled rotten, and they're good fans, man. Like, respectful, understand wrestling, show up, are great pro wrestling fans. So it's always good to come home.
Well, I'm going to be at the show as well, and I can attest to it. Being able to see Cherry Bomb and Pepper Parks are now part of TNA. The talent pool is rich, and Courtney Rush. It's great, and it'll be a great time and a great show. You're a big hockey fan?
Massive hockey fan.
Okay,
so
Mark,
you stole my question.
I probably watched 400 games this year.
Okay, so I'm a diehard Blackhawks fan, and you're a Predators fan, and we can hopefully finish the season without you hanging up because of it.
Yeah, we can be friends right now because Chicago's out.
Yeah. Hey, man, I know San Jose, they've got kind of Nashville on the ropes right now. So what are your impressions of this coming Stanley Cup? Who are you calling if, something doesn't happen in Nashville? What's your feelings of it?
It's been an amazing year. It's the kind of like, there's really no difference from the top and bottom team. There's not a huge gap there. And I know that's what the NHL wants. And to be honest, I didn't know how I would like the league set up this way, but I love it. Like it comes right down to the last game, meant something. That they did the redo of Anaheim, Washington, and that meant, Anaheim wins and they get number one seat. Like it's amazing. It's amazing. And it's cool. Yeah, the storyline of there being no Canadian teams and there's no original 6 teams left, and that's the first time in like forever that's happened. It's cool for me. The Nashville Predators are still in it, and San Jose's got them on the ropes. I don't care. You could be a blind person and watch that game. The Nashville Predators outplay the San Jose Sharks in every way possible. They just two lucky bounces for San Jose.
And that's sadly what it is when it comes to the playoffs, right? It's not necessarily the best team. It's lucky bounce.
Yeah, and I'm not taking anything away from San Jose. Look, I like San Jose. I love the NHL. Like I watch all games all year long. I'm a Toronto Maple Leafs fan by birth, and they don't make it easy sometimes. But I think they're going to be. I think they were decent this year, and at least were competitive. And next year they're going to be twice as good. I believe that. I think that the Toronto Maple Leafs next year they get Austin Watson. I think they're going to make the playoffs. So it's a cool time to be a Maple Leafs fan. It's a really good time to be a Predators fan. It's a great organization. I've done a couple hype videos. I was on the ice last year playing your Blackhawks. I thought about jumping Scott Darling, but he's a huge, huge dude. So I didn't do that. But the game that I did, the kind of like pre-game rally that they won 5-2, and I did it again in the Anaheim series. During one of the breaks, and I know that it was a viral video. It was all over Canada, and Jeff Merrick was talking about it on Sports Center or TSN Center Ice and all that stuff. So yeah, as a Canadian kid and being a huge hockey fan, pro wrestling and having television shows has opened up a whole new world for me, man, for sure.
So I have one last question, and Mike might have a couple for you. So the elephant in the room, at the April 28th WWE NXT tapings, the wrestling world was kind of spun on its ear when Eric Young shows up at NXT. How did the appearance come about, the confrontation, and where did the dialogue kind of get going to have Eric Young, get those holy shit chants going from all the fans?
Yeah, it's that's a big, beautiful elephant if you're asking me. It's super cool, man. I grew up on that, and my time came to an end at TNA, and it wasn't, it didn't end badly. It didn't, it didn't end the way I wanted it to, but people don't get divorced because they're happy, I didn't agree with some stuff, and we couldn't come to terms and see eye to eye on some things. So it was time for me to move on. And 12 amazing years, which is insane to say. And I became a free agent, and the WWE reached out to me about coming down there for a meeting, and I met and talked with Hunter, and things went great. And he's a straightforward and honest guy, and so am I. And everything worked out. And they said, "Hey, what do you think about being a surprise on the show?" And I said, "Absolutely." And one thing led to another, and out I came, and people went, they put the clip up, and it airs this Wednesday, but it's humbling. I figured there would be a reaction. I've worked hard for that. I've earned it, but the volume and the amount of reaction actually even surprised me. And very humbling, man, and an amazing experience to be there and to interrupt the new heavyweight champion in Samoa Joe, a really good friend of mine, a super talented guy, and get to share the ring with him in the main event on NXT is trust me, I'm telling you right now, it's the first step of many. But man, it's an amazing step.
And you know what, Eric, it's well deserved because of all the work and the effort. Mike and myself have talked off air, and we were just as excited to talk to you because we've seen this growth and this elevation and this, Eric Young is everything that wrestling fans really should look forward to. And we're really grateful for your time. Mike, was there anything that you had?
Well, one, just Eric, real quick.
Sure.
This is the honest to God's truth. So, my mother-in-law was flying back into town, and I live just outside of Dallas, Texas, when you made your debut last Wednesday. And I get a phone call from my son who's 11, and he goes, "Oh my God, did you see what happened?" And I didn't know what he was talking about. I mean, I knew I'd seen everything on Twitter. And he goes, "Eric Young just appeared at NXT." And I was trying not to ruin it for him because I don't want
Right.
him to get spoiled with spoilers. I like the fact that he watches it and gets surprised. It's like, yeah, I saw it. So one thing, you got an 11-year-old. He's like, God, he's in love with you from all your time at TNA over the last only 2 years because he's not old enough to remember the past. But so that's one thing. Mark kind of stole my thunder on the hockey thing. So look, Eric, I'm born and raised in New Orleans, so I lived there for 30 years before moving to the Dallas area. Hockey has not been on my radar forever in my life until this year. And until the playoffs this year, I actually got turned on to it by one of my podcast listeners who's a Bruins fan. And where have y'all been hiding this from us Southerners? Because, Eric, it's like the best of – it's kind of like football in a way for me because that was big down south, but at the same time, constant excitement. So why are you Canadians hiding it from some of the deep Southerners, I should say, Eric?
Here's the problem is we're not hiding it. There's just not enough of us. I mean, there's more people live in the state of California than the entire country of Canada. And there's just not enough of us getting the word out there. But I liken hockey and pro wrestling are very similar television-wise where – and you guys, being wrestling fans, and now that, you're kind of turned on to hockey, television doesn't do it any justice. Pro wrestling is amazing on TV. I've watched it for 5 years. I'm a fan. I watch it every day. I will watch it every day for the rest of my life. I love it. It afforded me this amazing life. I've traveled all over the place with my best friends. Had these amazing memories. I live in this amazing subdivision in Nashville, Tennessee. I own a Harley Davidson. It's all due to wrestling and wrestling fans. It's amazing. But until you see it live, you can't truly understand how amazing it is. Go to a live show. If you're listening to this, and I don't know why in the hell you'd be listening to this if you're not a wrestling fan, but go to a show. Go to a live show, any show, independent show, Smash Wrestling. There's a million independents out there that are doing great things and having great shows. And most of the guys you see on TV, that's where they come from. There's someone there. They're nobody's first before they're somebody's. And hockey's the same way. Hockey is the best live sport. TV ruins hockey, if you're asking my opinion. And this is a guy that I watched probably 400 games this year. It's amazing. Football is fun. Baseball is fun. Soccer is fun, basketball is fun, but nothing is like hockey live. It's so fast, it's so raw, and if you've ever played it and you can understand what these guys are doing with their bodies and their hands, it blows your mind. I played hockey my whole life, and it still blows my mind. You guys got me?
I thought I lost you, Eric. Mark, are you there? Mark must have dropped off. Eric, I think that was all he had, though. Are you there? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, Mark must have dropped off. I think he must be having connection problems. Eric, I think that was it, man. I didn't have anything else, man. I really appreciate your time and everything, man. It's been really great to talk to you and record an episode for Booking the Territory and Main Event Madness.
No, super cool. I'm glad you guys could have had me, and it was fun talking wrestling with you guys.
Same here, man. Hey, seriously, that hockey stuff, man, it's incredible.
Dude,
I had a listener who just kept telling me about it, and I finally just turned it on, and I've enjoyed it.
If you get a chance, man, like Dallas, I mean, they're still in it. They're good. And I would say, I mean, outside of I love Nashville and Toronto, but outside of that, Dallas is one of my favorite teams in the league to watch because they are fire wagon, man. They go for it. They are push the action, score as many goals as we can every single night. They're a fun team to watch.
Yeah, I have been watching them, and it's incredible. Like I don't know what to compare it to.
It doesn't have any. There's nothing you can compare it to, man. It's standalone. And I'm telling you right now, if you haven't gone to a game live, do it. Take your son, take your buddy, like just buy tickets and go. You will thank me for the rest of your life. It's amazing live.
I'm planning on doing so. I don't know if I'll be able to make a playoff game, but I am planning on doing
Yeah,
so
next year, man. Even shit preseason. If you don't really know what's going on, it ain't gonna make any difference to you.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. And I'm just learning,
Yeah.
Look, I'm like a guy who literally just walked out, and if you would equate it to baseball and figuring out how to hit the ball off the tee right now.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have ice where I grew up.
Yep.
It didn't work that way.
There's people here in Nashville. I mean, there's 8 full sheets of ice and these huge, beautiful arenas here, and there's people here that don't have anything, don't have any desire to watch it, and it's amazing to me being from a guy from Canada. Everyone watches it, it's hockey's everything. So
it's incredible. Well, look, Eric, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you very much. I don't know what happened to Mark. I was trying to conference him back in, but hey, man, thank you for your time and best of luck with everything in the future. And hey, you're welcome back on any time on either one of these shows, man. It's either Booking the Territory or Main Event, man. We really appreciate you having you.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Thank you.